Bay of Blood, aka Ecologia del Delito, 1971. It had like 2 or 3 other names besides that. I think I've got the trivia,
right off the tongue.
Sure does.
Yeah, Bay of Blood's actually a good name for a movie. I'm not going to lie.
I like it. Yeah.
Directed by Mario Bava, written by Mario Bava, Giuseppe Zaccarillo, Filippo Antonio, music by Stelvio Cipriani. Which that music, God Almighty, that was one step removed from a 70s porn music. That's all I gotta say. Like,
the struggle was real with the music.
The music sucked.
Yeah, not just any music that was supposed to give any kind of upbeat tempo, but the gentle orchestra music that was so calming and relieving. It's like, what the fuck?
That was a giallo type thing, though.
Okay.
I gotta admit, like the Italians, the Italians during this time period, the way that their music correlated to the scenes on film is almost like how we talked about with Japanese movies, where you got like this dark scene, but then like pop, light, airy pop music's playing. Same thing. I don't know why they thought that was a good idea. It took Americans to say, if you're going to have a dark scene, have like harpsichords, some kind of sharp sound. Hell, have it like in a, in like an octave lower than it should be, but fucking make it dark. Don't make the music like light and airy. That's stupid.
Yeah.
Made for a budget of $500,000. It made $60 million.
Wait, what? Repeat that, please.
$500,000 budget. Made $60 million.
Wow. Fuck. That's big for the fucking 70s.
How in the fuck did this movie make $60 million?
It's you make a horror movie, and I mean on a cheap budget. I mean, which $500,000 is actually a lot for this movie. I don't know how that took that much of a budget to film this, but still,
it didn't even feel like a horror movie. This felt like more like a true crime.
Save it for the trivia, or not trivia, the reviews or the, yeah.
Well, it technically wasn't a horror movie. They say it's the most slasher of the giallos, but it also is a giallo, which means it's a thriller crime mystery. That's what it is.
And is this early in the gelatos too? Like, or is this like mid gelatos?
This is like mid. Like they started in the middle 60s.
Okay.
Inspired by Psycho of all things, and then they then by 75, 76. They peaked, and then slashers came in 78 and said, fuck you all, we do it better. And that's basically how it went.
Okay.
They still make them today, but they're almost like how slashers are today. You know how slashers had their heyday in the 80s, and then some in a resurgence a little bit in the late 90s.
Yeah.
But you get like stuff like Terrifier, coming out now. That's like giallos. They just released one on Shudder, I believe, from Argento of all people, like Dark Sunglasses, I think's the name of it, and it's totally a giallo. It throws back to that whole genre again. So, principal players: Claudine Auger playing Renata Donati, the estranged daughter to Filippo and heir apparent to the Bay real estate. Luigi Pistilli playing Alberto, which is Renata's husband.
Luigi Pistilli. I was saying their names all Italian-ish when they were reading them. I was like, oh my God, they're literally all Italians.
Yeah. Claudio Camiso. Something weird that I didn't mention during Deep Red. That movie was filmed with Italian actors doing it talking in English, and they have both an Italian audio version of that movie and an American, or English version, and neither one of them match what they're saying, because where they were Italian actors doing American voices, their accents are not right for either one.
Okay, is that what happened in this film? Because it seems like there was times where the track was off.
Dubbed.
Okay, that makes sense.
Straight up dubbed.
But they were speaking English, but then it was dubbed over because their lips matched what was being said.
It's Latin, so a lot of it has English. Nomenclature
it's
to
a little close enough to where it looks like they might have done something similar where they tried to make it for American audiences, but the accents were just too thick and just didn't work, so they had to dub over it.
Yeah,
it's a weird effect.
Okay,
it just really is.
That makes sense.
Claudio Camiso playing Simon, or Simone as it looks how it's spelled, but Simon's how he's pronounced in the movie. The illegitimate son of Frederica.
You were right, babe.
Yeah, this was hard to follow. It was
kind of hard to follow. Yeah.
Wait till I do my synopsis of this.
Oh.
Chris Avram playing Franco Ventura, the neighbor to the Countess who wants to take the real estate for himself. He seemed like he was like one of those almost like a Italian Bond or something is the way they set him up in this movie, like a like a ladies man, like rich, whatever. Anna Maria Rosati playing Laura, which is Franco's girlfriend and co-conspirator. She's a hoe. Leopoldo Trieste playing Paulo Fasati, amateur bug enthusiast. Neighbor, and hates that the bay might turn into a resort. You always got to have a weird ass, like at least one person, if not a couple in a movie.
Yeah.
Him and his wife, Laura, played by Laura Betty, who plays Anna, who's a wannabe mystic and psychic. You couldn't get a weirder pair. Like one guy's in the basement fucking around with a bunch of bugs, which speaking of that, Mario Bava felt really bad because one of those bugs did get stabbed on like one of those, which not that I care because they look like water bugs and they look gross, but they that bug was killed on film. So I don't care what they put at the end of it. It was killed.
We had a Rutro Scooby.
But the wife, the mystic, man, she takes the cake. It's almost like she was the 70s version of early 70s version of Hannah or Helena Bonham Carter.
Oh,
like,
yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking. She was also too weird to be the main protagonist in this film or any kind of protagonist.
Well, yeah. I don't know if there is a main protagonist. This movie is just, it's weird that way. Brigitte Skay plays Louise, a random ass hoe who just wants to swim in the water teeming with corpses.
Hell yeah. The German.
And likes wearing dresses that don't cover her ass either. I don't know if you noticed that, but the very first scene, like she bends over just a slight bit and her ass is showing. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that German girl, I was just like, what the fuck?
I thought she was French.
No, the other girl was French.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. Okay, you guys, I don't know if you remember this or not. I think you guys would remember because I feel like this would be a core memory in your guys' brains. But those dresses came back in the 90s. Those baby doll velvet dresses.
I remember.
So I had a few of those. And so, yeah, that happened. And this was before I realized wearing boxers is where it's at underneath dresses. But yeah, that was a thing. So, but I wasn't hoeing it around like that one, trying to show. But I also
she deliberate. She knew what she was doing.
She knew what she was doing.
Understood the assignment.
But I've also never been quite the lady either. So I needed to not wear those dresses.
Yeah, there was a reason those dresses required the woman to basically bend at the knees and go straight down.
Yes.
Like you could not bend any other way without showing something.
Yeah, don't lift your hands up to grab something off the fridge.
Yeah.
It was all bad.
Paula Montanaro playing Sylvie, another random ass hoe who gets it good.
In more ways than one.
She gets the hard rod.
Guido Boccaccini, who plays Luca.
God damn, what the fuck?
Guido Boccaccini. That's a hell of a name, by the way. Plays Luca, the wannabe playboy, pays the price for banging a random asshole. Roberto Bonanini or Bonani, who plays Roberto, who's a dipshit that dies and doesn't even get to spend time with a random asshole. He had the hottest hoe of the group, and he just sits there and plays games or whatever the fuck he does.
What was going on with his hair?
Oh my God.
It's like someone torched a poodle and glued it on the top of his head.
That made me so happy to see that. I'm like, this is a classic 70s look right here.
I seen that and I couldn't stop, and I just kept commenting the whole time watching the movie. I was like, what the fuck is on his head? Like, what is that?
It was like some weird, because I mean he had the hoiest of hoes in the movie, and he didn't even attempt to go find her. Like, I mean, he's like, I'm just gonna wait for her to come back. I'm gonna sit here and mess around with some shit in here. You go bang in the other room.
Well, his hair was like some pre-mullet, but like the consistency of poodle hair, and like the same. It was like if Michael Jackson had caught his hair on fire, you got to see him right away. Like the aftermath of what his hair would have looked like would have been something like that. I couldn't get over that. I could not get over that.
He did have poodle hair, and they looked like pubes. That had been glued to his
hair. It was bad.
It was awful.
Giovanni Nuvoletti playing Count Filippo Donati, who murders his wife for a piece of property and gets shanked immediately after. That cracked me up so much.
That was awesome.
And let me throw this out there. I never once in my mind realized that you could. Never even thought about it. I had no reason to think about it. That you could hang at least a paraplegic from like 2 feet off the
Oh,
ground
yeah.
and actually kill him.
Okay, that makes more sense because she couldn't use her legs, and I'm like, well, she was
Well,
trying to.
No, I don't think she was paraplegic. I think she was just old as fuck and didn't have the strength. So when they hung her, she didn't have the strength to get off the ground.
Well, even without that, it's just it cracked me up in a bad way.
Yes.
To see she was only 2 feet off
Yeah.
the fucking ground.
Like
and
if she had applied herself, she
What-
could have lived.
The one thing I was thinking about the time when that was happening is like, why don't you just pull your knees forward so you can rest on them?
Could she have?
something.
Yeah.
I mean, she was not.
Oh, I didn't.
That was not that far off the ground.
That's what I'm saying. I was watching that. I was like, she could just pull her knees forward.
She probably could have, because back then they probably couldn't execute a very good hanging, which I think spoiler alert, this was my favorite death scene. Well, obviously it's
It was
a
pretty
twofer.
good. It was pretty good.
The way she was dying was pretty good.
Yeah, I'll give it that. But I was just thinking about, I was like, why don't you just grab her knees and pull them forward?
I thought the same thing, but that was not my favorite kill in the movie, and I'll get to them. There's some of the kills in this movie that I love for just how fucking insane they were. And then we rounding out the cast, we have Issa Miranda playing Countess Frederica Donati, the rich old biddy that dies being hung literally feet off the ground.
The star of the show.
So let me prepare for this synopsis here, and you'll get to what I'm getting at by the end of this. Filippo got with Laura. Laura was with Franco. They were sharing Laura's body and trying to score some dough. Frederico was hung by Filippo not even 2 feet off the ground, but Simon shanked Filippo when he decided to stick around. Simon killed some teenagers that were playing stupid games. He stabbed them while they were fucking and they couldn't get away. Renata found the bodies while looking for a will, and that's when Franco decided to end a bitch, if only for the thrill. Franco swung an axe to take off Renata's head, and while it should have been a better shot, she got him in the leg. There was an ever-present Paolo and his goofy wife, the Mystic. They were snooping into places they really shouldn't have visited. Simon choked out Laura. Alberto hacked up Simone. They were all in love with dying and drinking from a fountain that was pouring like an avalanche coming down the mountain.
Fuck up.
I started writing the synopsis for this, and I'm like, motherfucker, this sounds like the Pepper from the Butthole Surfers. I've got to write it in that tone. And that's what I did.
Mind the sun sometimes.
Because it was like literally like one person killed another, blah, one after the other. I was like, I have to do this.
Oh my God, I'm going to slap you through this fucking internet. I'm going. I quit the show.
Body count 13. Everybody but the 2 kids dies in this fucking movie. And I love it. I love it.
Were the kids even in the building that you mentioned?
No, I didn't even put them in there.
Spoiler alert,
Every
guys. There's
person
2
I
kids in this
mentioned
movie.
dies.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I'm not going to talk too much about this movie because it's not that well put together. It honestly is.
So hard.
Say.
It's so hard to follow what was going on. I was like, this doesn't make any sense.
And by the way, he stayed awake for this movie.
I'm not going to lie though. There's a couple things that kept me in this movie. The batshit crazy plot,
yes,
where they just kept one-upping each other on deaths. The fact that some of the kills in the movie, because I'm gonna throw it out there, that kill where Simon pegs both those the teenagers in the bedroom with a steel rod or whatever through both of them. Chef's kiss. I love that fucking kill. That was great.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I was laughing so hard just because it looked like she was still moving around the same way, and I was like, "You're dying."
I remember seeing a kill like that, and I'm trying to think what Friday the 13th, where he stabs both of them when they're
in the trivia. Yes.
And I was just thinking, like, when I seen that as a kid, I was like, that's awesome. How come no one's did that before? And then I seen that last night. I was like, oh, they did do this back in 70-6 or whatever.
71.
It was.
71.
Yeah. Like, not that, but it was almost done better.
Yeah. Friday the 13th stole from this movie, and not just in one movie, but 2. The scene where Simon kills one of them by hacking them in the face. I believe it was Luca, or not Luca, but Roberto. Whenever he hits him several times in the face with that billy hook, it looks like a machete, which hint, Friday the 13th. That is directly copied, I believe, in Friday the 13th, the original movie, and then part 2 takes the scene with the steel rod through 2 people that are fucking. So
That
Two different
special,
Friday the 13th movies stole from this.
that special effects when he hacked the dude in the face was actually pretty good for
Yeah,
the time.
it was actually.
I
And
did
then when
enjoy
you
that,
when you
yes.
see him pull it out and it's stuck in, which I got to go on a quick side tangent because it has to do with the machete. Apparently, some guy got hacked in Rancho Cordova by a machete by a crazy homeless man. And I was hearing this story on my way to work. Crystal was telling me the story. Shout out to Crystal. And our son was laughing the entire time. And he was like, and I was like, Benny, I was like, son, what is so funny about this story? And he goes, Friday the 13th, Jason Voorhees. Like, and he's laughing. I'm like, oh.
Buddy, this is real life.
This
That could have
is,
been you.
like, it is.
It's not. This ain't pretend, buddy. This really fucking happened.
And he was trying so hard to like contain his laughter. It was horrible.
Nice.
Yeah, and he's supposed to be the well-adjusted kid.
He is
Yes.
supposed to be.
Wrong. Wrong.
So I was laughing so hard. But anyways, also related to Friday the 13th, getting off that tangent, the water was very, I said it straight up. Like she was swimming. I was like, Jason Voorhees.
Oh, dude.
When I saw the setting for this, I immediately got Friday the 13th vibes. And whenever I read about the kills, I'm like, they stole so much from this movie. I know Friday the 13th, Sean Cunningham directly admits that he got the idea for doing Friday the 13th from Halloween. Like he doesn't even lie about that. He's like, I wanted to make a version of Halloween because it made so much money.
Yeah.
But he did not admit that he stole from this. And I mean, the setting of this feels, I mean, they've got an abandoned resort that teenagers are playing around in and get fucking killed over.
A boathouse. Yeah.
That is straight up Friday the 13th.
I couldn't get over that girl getting ass naked and jumping in that lake.
Like 2 eggs and a hanky.
Well, not like that, but then like it cut to the front of her and it looks like she had her wussy waxed.
Yeah, and that wasn't a very common thing back then.
No, I was like,
she didn't
dude,
have a bush at all.
Yeah, like you got no direction here going on. It's all just bare woods.
I thought personally she had a gorgeous body, a little flat butt cheeks, but it's okay, you know. The rest of her was happening. But going back to okay, there's a sign that says Bay of Blood in Italian. Did you see that?
I did not see that. No.
Very Camp Crystal Lake look to it. I'll see if I can find it and I'll send it. But there was a sign. It was like Baya something, and I was like, oh, I know that says. Well, no, it's something Baya something. So it didn't say Bay of Blood. I'm sorry. It was the Bay or something like that. But it's Baya and it was Bay in Italian. I did not Google that. I just kind of knew that. I mean, based off of Latin, so whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so that gave off very Camp Crystal Lake vibes in terms of the sign. And then in general, oh God, where was I going with that sign?
Well, and you had a proto doom prophet in the crazy mystic neighbor because she was the one warning that something bad was getting ready to happen. You know,
always got to have the doom prophet. I'll tell you what, though.
On the scale of annoying doom prophet, she's up there.
She is up there. But I will say this about this movie being, or Friday the 13th ripping this movie. What movie is everyone talking about more? I mean, I've never even heard of Bay of Blood.
Well, yeah. I mean, Friday the 13th, there's such thing as taking, inspiration or outright copying stuff and doing it better. Friday the 13th did it better. I mean, it did. I mean,
it actually had a story.
And the story, well, but also you take the fact that Friday the 13th did copy from this and it did copy from Halloween and it cemented that whole thing about a final girl, the stalker, took the giallo stuff about it. Friday the 13th, I would argue the original with Mrs. Voorhees is the most giallo like slasher that we will review, the original Friday the 13th, because you don't see the killer. They don't wear a mask. I mean, really. And, and it's all like off in the shadows, just like the giallos did.
Yeah.
So it took a lot of inspirations, but it mixed them together and made a perfect cocktail. That's the reason it became famous.
Yes.
And it had a retarded mongoloid hillbilly kid, that popped up near the end of the movie. And that always helps things. I mean, because you want to add a scare factor, add a mongoloid hillbilly and you'll scare some people.
A mongoloid hillbilly?
I mean, what would you call Jason Voorhees? I mean, that's what he is.
He's a precious boy is what he is.
He was a kid from the city coming out to enjoy the country.
Sweet boy.
See what happens when you let city boys in?
I'm going to say, too, I like the kill where I think it was Simone got his head chopped off, or Simon got his head chopped off. I love that. It is so cheesy, but it was just like perfect. It
was the wife.
Or yeah, that's who it was. Whoever it was got their head cut off. Like,
that was
or
a
no,
wife.
she did. Yeah, there was the one, but I thought that like Simon got, or maybe he just got his throat cut. Somebody did something like his throat area because it like completely disconnected.
Stabbed a few times or something, and he was swinging that blade thingy at the guy, even though he was dying. I can't remember if it was in his throat or whatnot.
You know what?
Yeah, you're right. The Mystic lady got her head cut off. That's what it was. And then
that was
her
horrible.
husband, the bug enthusiast, got choked by which was the
telephone cord.
Phone cord.
You know the part that I couldn't wrap my head around was the part where she smashes the boiling water in his face.
Oh yeah.
But the whole time it's like you can see her walking to it, grabbing it, staring at it, and like he's just sitting there talking to her.
And then he opens his eyes up like no problem after that.
The water's ripping, boiling, and she hits him in the face with it, and he's like, "No, I'm good."
Yeah, there's a lot of cheese in this movie, like a ton of it.
His face would have blistered immediately.
Oh yeah, well that's one thing that Deep Red did perfectly. When that killer like burns the woman, the author's face in Deep Red, her face comes out. It's got welts, it's got blisters, it's red. They did perfect. I mean, you felt the burn in that movie. So, but this is a way cheaper, movie and not as well done. So there's a reason why they didn't even think to do that. I personally loved the ending. How goofy it was. It's like, you got the two killers that's left. They think it's like, oh, now we've got the bay for ourselves. And then pop. It's two fucking kids that shot them.
Well, what got me is like, so what were they? They were like 10 yards out from him.
Yeah, it was close. Yeah, it was not very far at all.
If you hit somebody with that shot at that range, there would have been debris everywhere.
They did that. It was the classic cheesy Western kill where like you get like high caliber bullets. It should be like ripping chunks out of bodies. And literally the only thing that happens is they fall over and kind of clutch their stomach and die. That's what the death was.
Okay. Well, here's the thing too. Let's bring the movie X into this for a minute. Cause I just want to talk about the scene where she shoots Jenna Ortega's face off or she's trying to shoot the shotgun. I'm sorry. This is not when she shoots her face off. And the recoil throws this old lady back, Pearl. Okay, she can barely handle it. Yet you have two tiny little children here, just boom, boom, like nothing. And of course, it's too way early of a film for that to be in perspective. But
and they also, well, I mean, even Westerns at the time were throwing in a little bit of realism when it came to recoil. But the funny thing to me about this, that's the reason I love it. It's so cheesy and so bad. Like the fact that the kids think that they fired a toy gun. There is no way in fuck that a gun that's that powerful is not felt enough by the kids that they're not scared to death about what they just did.
Our parents played dead so good.
Yeah, the moment they hit him, there would have been carnage everywhere and blood dumping.
And not only that, there was nothing set up to be like these kids like knew there was a gun in the place or.
Oh no, you talk about the Chekhov's gun where you show a gun and then later you see it used. This is the opposite of Chekhov. This is the complete and total opposite. Chekhov had no gun, but Chekhov had a gun whenever Chekhov needed to shoot.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And I know this is so early. Rules weren't established yet, but it's just these things that even in just common sense. That, I don't know. It's just like, oh, although at the beginning, okay, so the parents, I guess, I don't know if they were parents or if this was just a guy that married that daughter that wanted to get the bay.
I don't know, but it was weird because they were living in a trailer.
Yeah.
Like on the property or?
Well, because.
I'm confused. Like I'm trying to.
The setup wasn't very good with this because.
No, it was not clear at all. And if he was supposed to be, they didn't establish if he was daughter to Filippo, or Filippo, however his name was, then they would have been grandkid, or she would have been the granddaughter to Frederica, but they acted like that he was like, that she was the child that Frederica didn't even know about or something. And then of course Simon was the child that Frederica had that Filippo didn't know about. So
yeah, the illegitimate
none of that
one
made sense.
Yeah. And not only that, but I mean, I know that, okay, so I caught this and there was a lot going on in this film. So I could have this mixed up, but there was something going on to where she had told her husband, well, we wouldn't be in this predicament if you had just listened to me in the first place. And I didn't know what it was in reference to, but they were basically allegedly poor because of him. He had made some kind of poor choice or something. I don't know. Again, this is something that I kind of picked up. and I know that they were trying to inherit the base. She was the heir apparent. So
yes, she was the next in line to get it as a legitimate relative.
Yeah, which is why she had to find her dad's body. That's why it's important, because if she finds his body, they have proof that he's dead. He's not a murderer.
And she had to find the will. That was the other part, because
yes.
that's why she was at Franco's, because Franco had found the will, and that's why she was trying to kill him, because that whole thing.
But putting these puzzle pieces together is very fucking difficult. It's like it being super like pitch black inside of a room, and you're like, okay, I've got these pieces. On the table.
It's even worse given the nature of how they told the story, because like they literally didn't reveal any of the characters' backstory until they were getting ready to die. It was almost like they had flashbacks,
yes. But the funniest part was, yes, they live in this trailer, and these parents are having an argument, and he's like, we shouldn't leave the kids, and she's like, fuck them kids, and
she literally was saying, fuck them kids.
They're fine, whatever, and they're in the trailer, and then you just see these two shadows looking out, and I'm like, those kids fucking hate her, which is funny. I still wouldn't have expected the ending that we got, but it was pretty fucking hilarious. I'm like she's a bad mom.
The real question at David, how in the fuck did this make $60 million?
Well, because was this 60 million? Like, was this international? Was this primarily?
I think this was total. I think this was probably, if I was guessing, I didn't research this, I think this movie was probably one of those drive-in movies that, like, teenagers, there was a little bit of tits and ass in, there was random deaths, a plot that made no sense, so you didn't have to pay attention to the movie, and you literally went to the movie to fuck, so you didn't care what was on the screen, and this was the perfect movie for that. And they did that a lot back in the day when drive-ins were, more popular.
Yeah. The heck. Anyways, I was thinking that it was more of an Italian thing, like they support their own, because some of these movies do good in their own, really, really, really well in their own countries.
But 60 million in a country like Italy, that's hard to pull off.
No, it had to have made money outside of that. Not much, maybe, but it did have to make money outside. Maybe not just Italy,
but maybe surrounding areas,
Even then, like the EU wasn't they're still coming out of World War II to a degree.
That's all I have. I mean, I can't think of anything else. 60 million is...
If we're breaking down the movie, the story's kind of dog shit. The acting is not really there. The visuals, this looks almost like I was talking about with a bad independent movie. The lighting is very flat. It's very natural. There's a few interior scenes that are lit better. He does do some artsy stuff with the kills. I'll give him that. Like, it's better than an independent movie when it comes to the kills and some of those scenes, but it doesn't stand out as like you compare this now to Sweet Alice, it's night and day.
Oh yeah, completely.
Well, what gets me is the amount of switching between night and day that happens from scene to scene. And
I love that it's got that cheesy night where you can tell that it was filmed during the daytime, but then they just cranked down the contrast on the film.
I know, like one scene, like literally they're in like the dark time of night, and like the next scene is like a minute or two later, and it's like daylight.
They like walk across the street, and it's
then
like
all of a sudden
again.
It's night again, and like it just keeps. I was like, what are you guys doing?
That was a lot of the cheaper movies during this time period, especially those black and white gothic films that they did. You would see it all the time. Like they would have scenes outside that was like you could tell it's filmed during the day. Well, going back to the Spider Baby, I mean, like the nighttime scenes of Spider Baby, obviously filmed at night or during the daytime, and then like they cranked down because like it was the lighting was weird. Like they try to pass it off as something that would work, but I mean the human mind it can't be tricked when it comes to that. I mean there's a weird Twilight effect that they do when they make the scenes like that, because the light's almost coming from under the ground because they can't turn it down enough to where the bottom of the the effect disappears. So you're seeing like this line that almost looks like daylight light right above the ground, but then everything else is dark, and it's like, is there a solar eclipse going on?
Yeah.
Like,
What's the situation? I am going to say this. The blood, fucking terrible. Looks like red. Not even, I wouldn't even give it, ketchup would have looked better. It was thick. It was thicker than the consistency of ketchup. So it was like a mixture of like maybe a thick paint. Maybe if it's something a little bit thicker than paint.
This was Dawn of the Dead level paint, or blood, and I say that because I love Dawn of the Dead, but I always thought that with that movie too. Like, there's several scenes, especially because they decided in that movie to make the zombies like that pale blue color.
Yeah.
Savini was trying to imitate the black and white effect of the zombies from the original film, but on color, the paint turned like a bluish color, or on film it did. So like whenever they would do the scenes where the blood would come out of these zombies, like that thick red blood mixed, contrasting with that it looked like paint. Like, I mean, it does not look realistic at all.
Yeah, that was terrible.
It's sad that Psycho had more realistic blood than any of these movies that came like a decade after.
Well, and they also had a little bit of a cheat code. I mean, black and white, they were able to cover up the fact that it was chocolate syrup, But
they could, but they made the consistency look real. The consistency
was so good as it was going down the shower drain. It was looking pretty good. I'm gonna throw it out here because I know
just throwing out tangent. You don't start getting good blood again until the 80s. That's whenever they started coloring it darker red. They thinned it out to where it looked, more realistic. Yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna kind of recap what you just went over. Story was hard to follow. The acting was mediocre at best. Visuals. It's a slasher film, so there's that. And that's all I'm going to say. And the music, I can't. I'm sorry. I get that this is an Italian thing, but...
Near 70s porno.
Yeah, I couldn't. I just couldn't, so...
You want to move on to the trivia?
Yes.
So like we said, Friday the 13th and Friday the 13th Part 2 pay homage to this movie by lifting 2 murders from it, one in each movie, almost shot for shot. The locations in all 3 movies look the same because they're near a body of water, abandoned resort, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
The shooting location didn't have woods, so Bava created the effect of them by setting up tree branches to pass through for the camera to pass through. So, according to Laura Betty, the trickery would look so silly during filming that the cast and crew would often laugh hysterically. He would literally hold tree branches next to the camera and then kind of pass it through.
Oh yeah. Which there was definitely trees because there was people hiding behind trees. Maybe just not woods, but there was some thicker areas of more trees.
There was a few trees, but he made it look more wooded than it definitely was.
Okay.
Which is actually to his credit. You think in your mind that it's more wooded than it is. That actually worked. Due to the film's low budget, most of the locations of the film belong to the director, Mario Bava, or members of the crew. The interior of Countess Frederica's home was shot at a favorite villa of Bava's, and the interior of Frank Ventura's country house were shot at a summer home owned by the producer.
Okay.
The film's low budget resulted in Mario Bava being his own cinematographer. He had to utilize a little red wagon for the film's many tracking shots.
Oh,
That's
my
how
God.
low budget this was. Dario Argento loved this film so much he had a friend who was a projectionist steal him a print of the movie during its first run in Italy. The theater ended up showing Hatchet for the honeymoon 1970 to replace the stolen print for the remainder of the film's run there.
Oh my God.
About a week and a half, according to Argento, he possesses the print to this day. So he still has the stolen movie that he got his
He had to steal his own movie?
No, that was Argento that stole it from Bava.
Okay.
Often considered Mario Bava's most influential film and the film that started the slasher craze, which is still popular. Many fans of the genre consider this the grandfather of the modern slasher. I'll give it this. I can see it is definitely, you see where they got slasher stuff from in this movie. Even if it is terribly made, it definitely has slasher vibes to it.
Yeah, well, I'll give it the granddaddy of slasher.
I'll say the movie isn't terribly made. The story is what makes it hard
to follow, especially.
Yeah, it's like you're running. It's not so much you're running multiple stories in one. You're running multiple incoherent stories into one.
It's literally Pepper by the Butthole Surfers. It's one death after another rattled off. That's what you're getting from this, and the ways that they died.
He wrote the intro like that song.
Dun, 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 dun.
To ensure the utmost realism in depicting the 13 different murders, Mario Bava insisted that Carlo Rambaldi be hired to provide the special makeup effects.
Well, that didn't work out.
It's probably realistic for the time. They had some shitty looking death scenes in the movie. You got to remember at this time, they literally were, that scene at the end we made fun of where they get shot and they fall over, that's literally how most movies were in that time period.
Yeah. I will tell you what looked good, the dead body of the dad that was found in the bay.
Yeah, the floated one.
Yeah,
that wasn't bad.
that one looked good.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. And it was even grosser when they had all the squids like sucking on his face or whatever.
That was funny. And his eyes kept opening and closing. I was like, this is awesome.
One of the 39 films that were successfully prosecuted under the Obscene Publications Act in the UK, a list commonly known as the Video Nasties.
Oh, yeah. I always laugh when I hear that Video Nasties.
One promotional gimmick was that every ticket holder was required to pass through the final warning station, where a theater worker warned you face to face that this may be the last shock film you will ever want to see. I'll give that a credit as a gimmick. It's not as good as the stuff that William Castle did with tingling the seats and all that. But I mean, making you get face to face with somebody and then basically threatening your death if you watch the movie. That's a pretty good tactic.
I wonder how many people
Mario
turned
Bava's
around.
personal favorite of all the films he made. What was that?
I wonder how many people turned around. There had to have been at least a few people that like,
there had been some,
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't do this. I wonder if they like backed off though. If they're like, no, just kidding, you'll like it. It's great. I watched it. Just kidding.
They probably did that. They didn't want to lose money.
Yeah.
Reportedly has more alternative titles than any other movie. One of the re-release titles for the movie was Last House on the Left Part 2, even though this film has nothing to do with Wes Craven's Last House on the Left. In fact, it was made a year earlier than Last House, the original movie. When Christopher Lee first saw this movie, he was reportedly so disgusted at the level of violence that he left the theater in protest. Can you imagine Saruman / Dracula walking out of your movie because your movie was so violent?
No. What the hell?
Different times, people, different times. The origin of the film was Mario Bava's desire to work with Laura Beatty again. Beatty had previously appeared in Bava's Hatchet for the Honeymoon, and the two had gotten along so well they concocted the premise of this film for another project together. This is almost like the story between Ty West and Mia Goth.
Oh, yeah.
Just in a different time period. Mario Bava personally suggested the title Twitch of the Death Nerve for the American release after hearing it was being marketed as a sequel. The film was released under both titles.
Okay.
He deeply regretted the scene where the bug is pinned alive.
Okay. Yeah, I deeply regret the fucking premise of your film. How about that?
The film not only had numerous titles, but also several working titles through the production. Among them, The Stench of Flesh, Thus Do We Live to Be Evil, and that will teach them to be bad, and Ecologia del Delito, Ecology of Crime, ended up being the first title the film was screened under in Italy.
This is harder to follow than the storyline. The titles that they've given this movie, a lot of them don't make any sense. I mean, Bay of Blood, no. I'm glad Bay of Blood was what was settled on because that makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, Simon's dumping the bodies in the bay. There you go. That's the sense. In the United States, the film was marketed as the second film rated V for violence during its first release.
So cool. I wonder what a V for violence film would be like nowadays. That would have to be fucking brutal.
If Terrifier can't get it, then Terrifier 2, then nothing will.
What is Terrifier and Terrifier 2? What are those? Just R? NC-17?
Yeah.
No? Oh my God.
Yeah, they're just rated R. I would have back in this time period, they wouldn't even allow them movies to be made, but that's a whole different thing.
That would be like a little bootleg movie. Hey kids, you want the good stuff?
We're on the rating section. I'm going to tell you, if I'm rating the movie based on its quality of how it was made, 1.5. Mm-hmm. As far as how much I enjoyed it, I'm giving this a 3.5. This movie's so fucking goofy that it was so bad it was good for me. I really did. I was sitting there, especially when I almost clapped when I saw the kids shoot the two last people. I was like, this is one of those bad like movies that Tarantino would have championed back in the day. You know, just bullshit, like terrible visual effects, terrible acting. You're lucky that parts of the movie were just like in Grindhouse wasn't cut out and like patched together, like and whole scenes missing. I mean, it's just one of those Grindhouse type movies, and I don't know. I just dug it. I was like, well, at least, I mean, even if it is bad, it's enjoyable kind of bad.
I felt like, but with Tarantino, that he's like riffing on the film. And so
No, but I'm talking about the movies that inspired him.
That's
those
true.
Really bad movies that he liked. That's what this reminded me of.
I do. It's a 1.5 for me. By the way, I stayed awake for this movie too. So that's.
Well, it was so insane. I don't know how you wouldn't.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's just
true. I'm sitting there and I'm like, what's going to happen next? So I'll give it that. You know, we'll bump it up to a 2 for that. Okay. I stayed awake. Irritated from beginning to end with this movie. The irritation never went away. I did not get a headache. So I am grateful for that. It was so hard to enjoy, but don't worry because strap your little butt cheeks down, everyone, because every slasher movie we're going to watch this season is going to get on my fucking nerves at some point.
Well, this is the reason, that I'm going to bring this up now. We are changing our rating system when we get, actually past this because they're all slashers in some way. Even if you call the original Chainsaw a proto-slasher, it's definitely a slasher when it gets into the sequel. So we're in slasher territory after this.
Yeah.
Slashers are all technically bad movies. Some of them had good plots, despite the fact, but they're not Psycho. They're not like, revelations and these amazing plots or anything. You know what you're getting into with a lot of them. It's like, you got a unkillable serial killer, a final girl, all the tropes. So that's what we're going to actually be rating our movies on is superlatives. Like when we watch the Friday the 13th movies, it's going to be best boobies, best kills, that sort of thing. We're going to forgo this because they're all probably 1.5s, 2.5s when we get right down to it. I didn't want to technically rate this one because like I said, it is, if you go by technical specs, it is a 1 or 1.5 at best. I just enjoyed it for the bullshit that was in it. I mean, that's seriously where I'm at with it. So
yeah, I mean, I feel like okay, so if there's 13 kills in a film, and this one had 13, right?
Yes.
Would we rate them like 1 out of 13, or are we just going to be like my favorite kill was blank?
We would just say my favorite kill, so. For instance, we don't have this lecture with this. They never made sequels, which is probably a good thing. Yeah. They killed off everybody, but Friday the 13th, if we, so my assumption is we're going to break them up. There's about 10, 11-ish movies if you throw in Freddy versus Jason, although that might be its own special episode. We'll have to see. But say you got Jason X is like the end, and you got Friday the 13th part 1 through 5, 6 through 10. And then in those individual movies of those, what was the best kill? What was the best, mask for the killer for Jason, for instance? What was the best weapon that he used? I mean, although he used a machete in most of them, there are other kills that he's got, and those are more impressive. Just stuff like that, just ranking that, like
are we
all
gonna
those
watch
5
all of them?
Films,
Are we going to watch all of them?
I personally was hoping to watch all of them and then just, basically, there's all the same plot and then just kind of discuss the ones that we like the best. Cause
I'm just going to have my son sit in for me. Benny's going to be with you on that. I'm just kidding. I will watch as many as I can. I don't know that I'm going to be able to watch all of them.
If you have to skip some of them, that's fine because literally it's a bulk rating. So if you didn't see part 5 because it technically doesn't have Jason Voorhees in it, which it does not, it's the Friday the 13th movie that doesn't have Jason other than in a dream sequence. That's perfectly fine. I mean, as long as you see a few of them, like the highlights, We
don't have a lot of time because next month is our Friday the 13th.
Yes. Yeah. Well, but we're not doing all of them.
I know.
We're just doing like the first half.
Okay. So. I can do that. Okay. Yeah. Because I forgot we did discuss breaking it up. But anyways, going back to Bay of Blood, I will say, and I've already mentioned it, my favorite kill was the woman dying at the beginning, the paraplegic, because it was the more realistic death. It looked good on camera.
It's so funny to watch, though.
It is funny to watch. All of them were funny to watch, quite honestly.
Oh, they were, yeah.
So, I was laughing the most at your favorite death scene, which was the impaled sex couple.
Oh God, I saw that and I'm like, I'm in for this movie now. I was half dozing. I was like, the kill with the billy hook to the face that did several times and he kind of pulled it out and it had that mushy effect.
Yeah.
I was like, that's good. But then I saw the two impaled with the rod and I'm like, oh God, you sold me now. Like I'm in for it. Let's ratchet this up. Unfortunately, that was the peak, but still there was some good ones after that.
Yeah, I don't think I would have been able to stick around. It would have been an absolute snooze fest for me had I not seen that lady die the way she did. And then immediately the person that was responsible for it gets shivved right underneath her. I was like,
I cracked up over
yeah.
that too. I was like, man, you're going right out the gate with this.
Yeah.
Like, the killer gets killed right off the bat.
That's what I need. So this entire movie is a 2 for me. I want to give it the credit that it's one of the earlier ones. I really wanted to jump off the ship as quickly as I could. I made it through the entire film. So I think I deserve a fucking cookie for that.
I knew you were going to have problems with one of the two of these. I honestly thought it was going to be Alice Sweet Alice more just because the kills were less goofy and out there.
I felt like they looked more realistic. And not only that, like the scary mask was effective. I get the Catholic lady, like I get that. I really do think they're as psycho as that lady was, some of them. And not only that, Bay of Blood had this thing that it kept doing. I know that they were trying to be artistic. It was annoying the shit out of me, but it was when the camera would go out of focus and then come back into focus, and it was the same scene. It wasn't like it went out of focus and then you come back in on something slightly different. It was like, oh, we're gonna pan in on this couple making out, and we're gonna pan back in. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I get you're playing with camera tricks.
The only I think that's what we were talking about that Soul did so well in Alice Sweet Alice versus this. He gave the movement illusion of the camera, like you're not seeing static shots, where literally since all he had was a damn wheel, like Little Red Wagon that he was rolling the camera around in, his way of creating movement and not just static, shots was to zoom in and out. And obviously that's not a good way to do that. But whatever.
I didn't like it. Bebe, what's your rating of Bay of Blood? That's a very Lurch comment. He loved it, everyone.
The story made it so just. I liked a lot of the murders and stuff like that, and the deaths that they pulled off. I'll give it that 100%. But man, it was just
that plot's convoluted as fuck. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yes, and it made it so hard, dude. So,
what was your favorite death scene?
The hatchet in the face one was dope. That one, and it's really hard to top that up for the most part. But if I had to choose, that would be the one. Yeah. I give it maybe like a 2.8.
Oh, it's higher than me.
That's kind of where it's
technically higher than me if I'm just rating the movie on its merits.
Yeah.
And not enjoyability.
Yeah, he stayed awake for it, so there's at least that. It wasn't.
You got to remember. We've joked about this off air before. I mean, I like my pretentious, like A24 elevated horror movies, but you give me a good cheesy, like Evil Dead type movie, as long as it's, got, I would argue Evil Dead's like actually well made, even for like a student art film. But like, there's other movies like that if like Troll 2, God almighty, that's a horrible movie. Like, that's not even a 0.5 or that might be a 0.1 if I was rating it on the merits of the movie making it itself. But when you see a kid literally get up and piss all over his family's dinner plates just because, like, some, and he's literally says, "I'm pissing on your hospitality," and that's how the movie begins. You've got me. Like, that. This movie's batshit insane. I'm going to stay with it for the rest of the movie because I want to see how fucking awful it is.
Yeah,
it's one of those type movies.
Oh my God.
I got vibes like that from this movie. I mean, it wasn't so terrible that it shot it way up there like we're going to be reviewing with Silent Night, Deadly Night 2. But I mean, which is a lot better about all those things. I mean, Garbage Day is my favorite thing I've heard in a long time, but we'll get to that.
Yeah,
I haven't seen Garbage Day in a minute. Yeah, I don't think Raina's ever seen the movie.
Oh, I told her, I was like, we're not technically we're reviewing the first one and then Christmas.
Is it Garbage Day?
But we're
or
going to
Trash
discuss
Day?
part 2. We're going to discuss it. I mean,
is the movie Garbage Day or Trash Day?
It's literally just Silent Night, Deadly Night 2, but but everybody knows it is that because of that line, and I want her to comment on that line. I want her to see that.
Why do you guys torture me?
Really?
Like, I don't know. This is I think the fans should know it's gonna be a rough season during but I think that slasher season's gonna be rough, but then I think that zombie season's next, and I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna survive. So pray for me, everyone.
And with that, peace be with you.
And with your spirit.